Joining me on today's episode, the founder and CEO of FleetMilne, an award-winning estate and letting agent based in the heart of Birmingham. Fiercely independent, her team has forged a reputation as the residential market expert, renowned for letting, managing, selling and consulting on high-quality apartments, focusing on a niche market and doing it expertly. With a portfolio of over 2,000 fully managed build-to-rent apartments, her company is the go-to name within the Birmingham city centre market. She is also the co-chair of Colmore BID, representing both a large number of professional service businesses and a contingent of hospitality businesses, as well as a number of other voluntary positions, including being the co-chair and co-creator of the Jewellery Quarter Neighbourhood Plan, a member of the Neighbourhood Hippodrome Development Board, and also the former Birmingham Future Young Professional of the Year award winner, cementing herself as one of Birmingham's most thriving professionals in the real estate market. Nicola Fleet-Milne, welcome to A New Lease of Life.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. It makes me sound quite impressive.
It does. Nicola, look, we've known each other for a short time. One thing we have in common is I'm from Birmingham, and you've worked in Birmingham. It looks like literally most of your career. So, but you're not a Brummie, are you?
No. I'm a Londoner originally, but I went to university in Birmingham, went to the University of Birmingham in 1997, and can confidently say I loved it so much, I never really left.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Look, I guess what I want to, when we start these conversations, it's really understanding sort of what, your background, what your career story looked like to sort of shape and mould who you are today. So not necessarily going into FleetMilne right this second, but talk to me about kind of Nicola's story.
Okay, so as I said, went to the University of Birmingham, had an amazing time while I was there. I joined the University Air Squadron, and my original plan was I'm going to be a pilot. So that was my career path. Unfortunately, at the end of my time at university, I failed my final medical to get into the Royal Air Force and didn't make it. Just to be clear, nothing weird, but my reach isn't quite long enough. So
it's out of your control.
Basically, what they were saying, they did actually say to me, technically, you can't fly the aircraft you've been flying for the last few years. It's just a thing on paper, isn't it? Anyway, so it meant that I was at a bit of a loss because I really didn't have a plan B. And I did what anybody in that position does, which is I temped. So I went out, I covered all sorts of positions, stayed in Birmingham, and one of my temping jobs landed me at Knight Frank. It was a 2-day assignment. I told a little lie to get that job, which was, they said, can you do, the audio typing? And I said, yeah, sure. Started on the first day and said, I don't know how to do this. So the lady who was there just laughed and said, fine, I'll teach you. And I got it very, very quickly. It was fine. And then after those 2 days, the head of office said, actually, you've got a brain in your head and would you like to join the team? We've got a position in lettings. Never even given lettings any thought. In fact, as a child, I had declared I never want to be an estate agent. Bizarre. So they offered me a job and I really settled in. And I have to say, I loved it. I could see my career path through to partner, head of office, international moves. And then after a year and a half, they sold my department. So I got TUPE'd to another firm. So I think
that's always unusual, the idea of going into one company and all of a sudden having a different employer.
Yeah, and terrifying because I was really settled. I really liked everybody, got on very well with everyone. So they moved me to another firm, which I didn't enjoy in the same way, didn't have the same resource level. And I was very much kind of left on my own. But I was the key to keeping all of those clients. And a little under a year and a half later, I'd had enough, handed in my notice, and then started FleetMilne. So that was...
Just before you carry on, so my second question was, what was the turning point? Was that the turning point in that you'd moved to a business you didn't resonate with and you were like, I think I can do this better and I've got the client base that I've built up?
Yeah, it's a weird one because I suppose they weren't really my clients at that stage, although I was the only person in the new firm who had the relationship with them. I worked very hard. I'm a real doer, and I I have very high standards, and I was working really, really long hours, but I was really frustrated. Like I said, the resource level was very low, and actually I could see that part of the people who suffered from that, really, not just the residents, but actually the clients as well. And, you know, it's no big secret, I got to the point where I was just crying whenever I got home, just so frustrated, so angry, so probably just defeated and exhausted. And rather than think I could do it better, I just knew I could. I absolutely knew that this was rock bottom and there was nowhere worse to go. So I might as well give it a go myself. So, I mean, if you think back, God, the arrogance of thinking at like 25, 26, I can do this, I can run a company. I've got absolutely no experience.
I've heard the argument that sort of naivety at a younger age, it sort of plays into your advantage because you're not scared and you're just like, let's go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. If I could have been sat down then and told everything I'd need to know, it probably would have scared me off. But I knew enough, and I knew that service was number one. So, you know, a lot of people set up businesses for money. I set it up to do an excellent job, have an excellent reputation, and I knew that if you get all of that right, the money comes from that. That's fine. So, naively strolled into it, and I knew I'd learn as I went. So.
Let's talk about FleetMilne there. I guess if you could just, for anyone who's listening who hasn't heard of you, what is it you do? How has it evolved over the years, and how is that brand recognised?
So it started, I was a lettings person, that was the only experience I had. So it started as lettings and property management. As you can imagine, in the early days, you kind of take on everything and anything. The only thing I really drew a massive boundary around was the geography. I didn't need to be travelling out. I didn't need to be travelling to Kings Heath or to Sutton or to Solihull. I needed it to be city centre. It was also, at that time, very early days in city living. That was kind of the birth of city living in Birmingham. And so there were construction sites everywhere. You could see your pipeline being built around you. So I set up in serviced offices at the front of the mailbox. So a nice, easy location. I could walk everywhere. And I was there for 3 years. I was only on my own for 3 months before I brought on my first person. And really, I've never been shy to have, like I said, I'm got high standards, a bit perfectionist, but I'm also a born delegator. So I was comfortable bringing people in, training them and getting them to do stuff. And really the brand I probably didn't do very much in the way of networking and promoting early days. The one thing I did, which was phenomenally expensive for me at the time, was I took out, I don't know if you remember this, on Virgin trains, they had a magazine on the carriages. I took out a full page advert that those were only published every 3 months, I think. But for a year or so, I took out a full page. And it turned out that my previous employer had been telling people I'd left the industry. And so my clients who I'd left behind, I couldn't touch them, and I'm very rule bound, started phoning, saying, there can't be many FleetMilnes, and this is clearly where you've gone. And then people started moving.
So it worked.
Yeah, it worked well. And I think I had a target in year one of letting, it was something really quite reasonable, like 60 properties. We managed 120 in the first year, so smashed the first target. So, and I did end up taking the entire portfolio off the old company.
Wow.
Not by proactive means, actually, by people coming to me.
It's been a good feeling.
Yeah, and I still have some of those clients today. So.
And then sort of fast forward, how did the business continue to develop after that first year?
Rapidly, lots of learning, seriously steep learning curve, staff in and out. You know how it is when it's early days. It's really hard to keep people long term. After 3 years, we'd done enough that we needed our own proper premises. So we took on a 10-year lease. Just the mind boggles. 10-year lease, you're only 3 years old. at the back of the mailbox on the canal side. And the reason we chose that location was the construction was predominantly in that area. So I was quite literally on the doorstep. And so people would come to see something they were buying as a buy-to-let, and there we were. It was just an easy conversion. But after 5 years, we'd outgrown that space. The construction had all finished. From about 2006, I'd started the networking side of things, lots of awards being won, that kind of stuff. So the brand reputation had really grown, and the income had really grown. And we took, it was mid-recession, and we took another 10-year lease, even though we still had 5 years where we were on Colmore Row, which is kind of the prestigious street in Birmingham, and we've been there since 2011.
And that's a very bold move. So what was the thinking behind that?
The thinking behind that was that my client base had changed slightly.
Yeah, so you moved with them.
Yeah, I needed to move with them. So they were no longer walking in and out of construction sites. They were quite often, it was growing further afield, so not just UK based. And they were, a lot of people were based on Colmore Row or the companies.
And for anyone listening who doesn't know Birmingham, doesn't know, how would you describe Colmore Row? Because when I was a teenager walking through it, I didn't look up, didn't really appreciate it. The more I go back to Birmingham, and I've been there to meet with people, actually, it is a really trendy, cool area.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area. Colmore Row is sort of the main street, but it's flanked by fabulous buildings. The architecture is quite varied along there, but there's a lot of Cotswold stone, that sort of creamy look. A lot of the buildings are listed. It's a conservation area. It's kept very clean. For anyone who does know Birmingham, it has Pigeon Park or St Philip's Cathedral.
Yeah, I do.
And it's just a really nice area, and it's where it's the biggest professional services base outside London. So
no, I've been to a couple of meetings there, and what I noticed in the office is that they've retained the architecture. I'm guessing they're listed, so they can't change them. But that was really cool. The agency business, it's obviously a place which absolutely has competition. So what is it that sets you guys apart from the rest of the market?
I'd like to say really obvious things, like our service is excellent. I'm not going to say we never make mistakes. We do make mistakes, but it's how we deal with them that tends to come through. I've been very clear with the team, and I'm always very open to, if you've done something wrong, hands up, work out what you did wrong, how you're going to remedy it, and learn from it. Don't repeat that. So that's a huge cultural thread for us. The other thing, I think this is a crazy USP, we call you back. I know that sounds insane. It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? It should be an absolute fundamental for all businesses.
Well, no, so I always think recruitment industry, the DNA with a estate agency, there's a lot of similarities, and we have that exact same issue. It's communication.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And communication goes a long way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm a fairly communicative person.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And then obviously build to rent is an area which it looks like your business, you do lots of things, but build to rent's a big part of that. How did that transition look like over the last couple of years?
Well, it probably comes out of the fact that because we started as lettings and property management, that's always been the greater slug of what we do. For a long, long time, we haven't done what in the industry is called find tenant only, which is finding a tenant and handing them over to the landlord, mainly because the majority of my clients aren't local and can't deal with anything. And secondly, because the kind of properties that we look after, the clients tend to be cash rich, time poor, and the residents it's high end, so they're not interested in having to liaise with the landlord who happens to be on holiday, or they want 24/7 service. So because we had that, next month will be 20. So we've been doing that for 20 years. It's the absolute core of our business. Build to rent is such an easy fit with that. It's literally hand in glove. So build to rent is about professional management of entire schemes. And so we fully understand what it looks like when you're managing everybody in a building and making that a really quick, responsive, seamless process. So we got involved consulting on that side as early as 2016. The first scheme didn't launch in Birmingham until 2018, but we were heavily involved with that all the way. So now we're in our transition is now from consultancy and helping people fill their buildings now to operating the entire building.
Fine. So it's the entire customer life cycle, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, interesting. Let's talk about Birmingham in general. I mean, my colleague very kindly booked a day trip to Birmingham to go on a tour of buildings, and I actually didn't quite anticipate how much there was. I was in Birmingham this weekend, and I was actually running through Edgbaston, and that car park next to the cricket ground, which was horribly derelict for years. I think it's Patrizia. Their building has absolutely shot up. So there clearly is tons and tons of hyper growth. What do you think sort of led to that growth?
Oh, just the stock not meeting supply. Absolutely. There are all sorts of stats, and I don't know the exact numbers, but for a while, Birmingham, it's got 5 universities. It was losing its university graduates to other cities, predominantly London. That trend has been dramatically reversed over the past decade, and now Birmingham retains something along the lines of 40% of all students.
Wow.
So that's a huge number staying, adding to those who are already staying. Throw in the fact that the professional services sector continues to grow. So Goldman Sachs have come in the last couple of years, around 800 staff already. HSBC relocated their HQ. That's something around 4,000 people. There's just a constant influx of people. There was all this unused space in the city centre, and people wanted to live within walking distance of work. So the development side of it has gone absolutely crazy, which is good.
And I don't want to get too political, but HS2, it will be happening as it stands with the Midlands still. But surely that's only going to then increase investment and interest.
Yeah, it already has. Since it was announced, and again, I can't remember the exact stats, but it's something like 600% more development going on. Not just in the city centre, obviously further out near Arden Cross as well. But that's just a massive benefit to the professional services sector, but also then there's a ripple effect to all the other businesses around.
Is short stay accommodation a big thing in Birmingham, or like almost like serviced accommodation? Because if you've got staff from these big corporate companies, they might not be from Birmingham, but they need somewhere for 6 months. Is that?
Yeah, it is definitely a growing sector. Way back in the day, in the sort of early 2000s, a lot of the city living was predicated on those corporate lets. So as an example, KPMG knew that they would be having however many people, in and out for a period of time. So they would rent an apartment in their own name, as in KPMG, and then they just put people in from month to month as they needed to. With the recession, that completely died to death. Any way that's been resurrected since is allowed. So if you were coming up to work, you'd rent it, they might pay you a contribution. But the short stay element, I think, saw a gap in the market there and realised, because not everyone's even as long as 6 months. No. It could be 2 months, it could be 2 weeks. And hotels really aren't, they're just not as...
beyond a week too well.
No, they're not economically viable too much longer than a week.
And then if you're looking at your own data and the sort of the typical type of renters in a Birmingham build-to-rent scheme, we've spoken about students, we've spoken about corporate workers. I mean, is it typically people from Birmingham, or is the sort of the type of renter, is it really diverse?
It's pretty diverse. Obviously, there is an affordability issue at the heart of it. So when we say students, there still is a financial obligation involved. A lot of the overseas students, obviously, so Middle East and Far East are the two biggest cohorts. around 50% of all lets in the city centre are to some form of student.
Right.
But even that is a really broad range. So you do have undergrads, you have postgrads, MBAs, PhDs, people coming in from overseas, you know, companies and military forces to study.
Yeah.
So it covers a full breadth.
Only last week, I mean, there's a lot more attention in the single family housing sector, or suburban build to rent. There was like 2 or 3 conferences and a launch event for the Single Family Housing Association. Is that something you're looking at in Birmingham?
Because it's more suburban, and because currently we still have that boundary, which is starting to leak a little because things you referenced Patrizia's Edgbaston scheme, which is Corkfield. So we will work on stuff like that because it is wholly owned, and it's an easier prospect to deal with. Ultimately, you have one client. So yes, we will be looking at the single family. There is one scheme in Birmingham which is a bit of a hybrid. The Heimstaden Soho Wharf scheme is some multifamily, some single family. Again, right on the periphery of the city. But yes, I think that the key is the professional management. Yeah. Because you've got complete control over an entire site. Yeah. So keeping an eye.
We're speaking a lot about opportunities at Birmingham, at least, such as the undersupply of existing stock. Without trying to sort of turn this conversation negatively, what are the challenges or the bugbearers about Birmingham at the moment in terms of whatever you choose, whether it's planning or the councils? What are the big challenges for you at the moment?
There are most of the challenges have what I'd kind of call like good intention behind them. Yeah. So a recent one was the introduction of licensing, selective licensing. So HMOs have had licensing for years, but the selective licensing now covers all private residential lettings. Yeah. So that's an additional cost for the client. There's additional admin requirements. It's just one of those scenarios, and it also covers BTR. Yeah. So the BTRs if you have 100 units and it's £700 per unit and there is no discount system, and ultimately you're putting in front of the council 700 identical style units with one single management function. Yeah. The intention is good because there are rogue landlords, there are people who are not ticking off those legislative boxes, but it's one of those processes that needs a little bit of ironing out. And I think given time, it will. Yeah. But that is a potential challenge for people staying as individual landlords in the sector. Yeah. So. Yeah, it's doing the opposite of what it's trying to do. It's going to almost push people out. Yeah, well, hopefully those who are professional about it won't. They'll understand. I mean, £700 over 5 years is £12 a month. It's not a bank breaker, but it might stop some people from entering the sector. Yeah. There's also a bit of a challenge between brand new builds and the build to rent coming through at the moment, and how those look, how those are presented, and how they're managed. And the older stock from, say, 2000 to 2005, which is much tireder. If you've got 100 units in a building, you could potentially got 100 different owners of units, 100 different financial positions, 100 different approaches to what is reasonable and how to look after residents. And it's not run like a business, whereas a build to rent scheme will be run like a business. So updating the reception area is a big cost, and not everybody's up for that. Of course. So it's starting to divide the market in terms of what's on offer. So there'll be cheaper stuff that's tired, and then there'll be brand new, like your Moda, which is very expensive, but it's got all the bells and whistles. Yeah, I've been on a tour around it, and it was incredible. Yeah. I've not seen a building like that before. But you will see many more of them coming through. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's good to see Broad Streets being, it's not a regeneration project, but it's good to see more housing there, because I just remember nights out there. Yes. I think, if you remember them, they can't have been that good. Oh, exactly.
when people have questioned government about build to rent, I feel like there's a real lack of engagement. But perhaps talking more about Westminster, what about Birmingham in general? When, like the likes of Andy Street, is the private rental sector, is it something which is received quite well?
It's an interesting one because housing stock is a huge issue, and the government is very concerned with that, as are local politicians, including Andy. But it's also something they can't really control on the build to rent side, because it's pension funds buying land, completing the construction and then operating. So it helps in terms of ticking numbers, but it's not necessarily at this stage helping as much on the affordability side. And actually that's where the real problem is there's not enough affordable stock. So I think that one's quite a tricky one, because everyone wants to be excited about it, but it's not necessarily helping them answer their challenges.
I went to UK Reef last year. It's one of my favourite conferences because you do get a lot of the mayors and the councillors there and have access to people, and I think it's having the conversation which allows us to make some progress. I wanted to also ask about the Colmore BID. You're co-chair of that at the moment. Talk me through exactly kind of the work you're doing and progress you've made.
Okay, so I'm actually the chair on that one.
Sorry.
It's fine. It's absolutely fine. So I've been chair of Colmore Business Improvement District since January 2020. So that was a bit of a baptism of fire.
Wow, so they went into lockdown.
Yes, we went into lockdown, had to chair from afar, which is just very different from anything I'm used to. But it's an incredibly successful bid. It's counted as one of the elite bids in the country. Very professionally run. I have a very attentive, very professional board. And it's an area that it's very difficult to describe when you come into Birmingham and you see it as it is. And I've always sort of said, if you imagine this area full of colour and vibrancy, and you almost strip that back down to grayscale, that's a little bit like it at the beginning before the bid existed. So it's been going now for 15 years. And we've just won our latest ballot. So we recommence the next 5-year term in April. And it's such a privilege to be the chair, because it's a fully functional bid. It does a great amount of stuff. So there's really simple things like street cleaning and, the flowers and, all this kind of city dressing. But then we try and do things that are far more sophisticated. So we've done a lot of public realm works, working with the council, getting external funding, transforming some of the street scenes. Most recently, we've also brought in a city curator, which is basically about pulling all of the culture in the city together under... It's not that it's this one person to manage, but this one person to make sure that everyone's talking to one another. Because the last thing you need is, we've got this food festival over here, and then over this side of the city, someone goes, we've got a food festival, and it's the same weekend. We should have talked. So how do we... not only how do we collaborate better in a city that's long been accused of really tribal behaviour, but actually the collaboration is excellent. Not only that, but how do you then come up with new ideas and bigger and better things that you can do? So that's started this year and already is so successful.
It's very rewarding by the sounds of it.
No, it's really good. It has to be rewarding because it's voluntary. So you have to love it.
I guess that as I've understood and talked through your business, it seems that it's very Birmingham centric, but actually you're looking beyond that. So talk to me about sort of the plan and the future of FleetMilne.
Okay, so the dream is to end up being a national operator. We have a roadmap. We are very much at the start of that, really. Birmingham, its city centre is done. We're very happy with our progress there. And now the next stage really is having clients who have schemes elsewhere in the country so that we can start to go city to city. And I imagine the first stage of that is multifamily because it will be the stock that we're very used to. I don't believe in diversifying so broadly that you're like a fish out of water. I like to stick to my knitting. I know what we're good at.
I think that's why you've been so successful in Birmingham, because you've been so city centre focused.
Yeah.
And that you're the specialist there.
Yeah. I don't let it get diluted.
Yeah.
I don't need people being distracted and being pulled off onto projects they don't understand.
So with that growth, how are you going to get there? What do you think is going to be the number one or the main thing to get you there?
It's probably a client-based element. So we do already have a number of clients that we work for in Birmingham where we look after the whole building. The only difference at the moment is that they're non-amenity based, so they don't have things like gyms and cinema rooms and whatever to like manage. But some of those clients will have projects across the country. So we're already in talks with one of them. They've got 4 other schemes across the country. So if we can get into that position, we've been working for them since 2016 and they are very happy with us. It's one of those relationships where I say, look, this is what needs to be considered. What do you want to do? And they say, what do you think we should do? I say, okay, fine. This is what I think you should do. I'm not scared to give recommendations. So as that starts to grow, it's a bit of a ripple effect, isn't it? Because you've got to get one to then all of a sudden the floodgates open and lots of people will be on the phone, or at least that's the plan.
Yeah, and I guess one of the ways you'll get there are the people in your business.
Yes.
Talk to me about kind of what's a typical employee at FleetMilne. What are their behaviours? What's the culture?
First of all, we have a massive diversity issue, which is there's loads of girls. Yeah. But I have no problem with that. I don't know, over the years, you could say you do hire sometimes in your own likeness, but actually, aside from the male-female mix, we've got people from all sorts of backgrounds, which is great. Yeah. But my currently longest serving, that's an awful word, sorry, but the person who's been with me by my side the longest is Kirsty. She's coming up for 12 years. Wow. We've had many people over the years hit 10-year milestone. I think Becky's been 10 years, 11 years almost. Yeah. So there are a lot of people who have been here for the long haul. Yeah. I believe it's a career, not just a job. But it's really hard. There were some early moments with many individuals where you think, will this work? Have they got... But there was also my development. When I started, I knew nothing about how you develop somebody, just remnants of how you kind of manage a position. So as I've learned over the years, as I've developed and realised that the more you develop other people, the better it is for the business. That's where my focus has moved. Yeah. So it's exciting. Yeah, it's the skills out there. The skills are out there, but sometimes you really have to look beyond perhaps those first few months where people are, everyone's quite nervous when they start a new role, and you've got to kind of find something in them and get to know them so you can draw out those skills. Well,
look, I'm very excited to watch FleetMilne's journey, and we'll be watching fondly and from afar. As always, we do finish with some very quick fire questions. Ultimate build-to-rent scheme. What would your ultimate build-to-rent scheme look like?
What would it look like?
Or what would it be? Where? What?
I would like lots of real greenery. That's a key one for me. Good, well thought out amenities. So I'm not a fan of cinema rooms. That's well known in the industry. But I do think if you want to attract young families, you've got to have some kids space, plenty of hireable rooms. Whether it's private dining so that you could have a dinner party, or whether it's like a community space, you have a kids party, or I don't know, you could have some sort of book fair or anything really. But I think the community space is really key, and minimum national space standards in the apartments, not rabbit hutches.
Think we'll ever see something on Colmore Row?
No.
We need to keep it as it is.
Yes.
This might not be relevant to you because you're not from Birmingham originally, but I don't want to upset anyone. Aston Villa or Birmingham City or West Brom?
West Brom.
West Brom.
Yeah,
nice.
that one's an easier one.
I'm glad I mentioned that. Bowie or the Beatles?
Oh, Bowie. I do love the Beatles, though.
Perfect. If you sat down with the housing minister or the new prime minister after the next election, I'm going ahead because it is what it is at the moment.
Yeah.
What's the first thing if you had time to sit down with them, what would you want to address in the context of the build to rent sector?
Oh, in the context of build to rent, lots and lots of collaboration, because I think there's plenty of land out there that the government could have more influence over getting released so that things could be built. I would like to see a lot more affordable going in, but that there needs to be compromise on how that's built into the scheme. I'm really not a fan of constantly saying, oh, well, our affordable is over here, where it doesn't get in our way. Actually, how do you teach aspiration amongst anything, that you want people to be able to get into those areas? And you've got lots of people working in a city centre who aren't necessarily partners, or senior people who don't earn as much, but the walk to work would be so much better than constantly having to get a train.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Nicola, thank you. Really appreciate your time.
No problem at all. Thank you very much.